Hello and welcome. Today we're taking a look at the Chanel Fall Winter for 2024 collection. And this is an all matte collection. We do have a cooler color story and a warmer color story. So I picked up the cooler shades with all the purples. In addition, we also have brand new Rouge Allure Velvet liquid lipsticks. So these are permanent. The other items are going to be limited edition. So the Rouge Allure Velvets, we're going to be taking a look at those, and I have been testing out the formula. Right now I am wearing shade number 206 Super Nantes. So that's on my lips right now. And let's go ahead. We're going to start off with the limited edition items. And we're going to start off here with this nail polish here. So this is the shade 189. And I have a really hard time pronouncing it, not because I haven't heard a pronunciation of it, but just because my mouth does, I don't know, I can't get the right syllables. So phenomenon, it's like phenomenon, essentially, but in French. So anyway, we do have our typical Chanel nail polish with our wide brush, which personally I really like. And you can see that this nail polish has, you know, a few different shades, kind of like a little shift in there. So it's green, purple, even a little bit of pink, but it's really kind of that green, purple, like Aurora Borealis kind of shades, just a little bit deeper. This is 2 coats plus a glossy top coat. So when you don't use a top coat on this, it gets more of a satin matte finish. Definitely not a matte nail polish, but not as shiny as some nail polishes can be on their own. So I do prefer with a top coat. So just something to note there, but I think it's an absolutely gorgeous shade. And this is one that I'm planning on wearing repeatedly. I was so happy with this particular shade here. So that I think is definitely a win. And let's go ahead and we're going to swatch the rest of the collection here. So this is the eyeshadow palette that I picked up. This is $3.94 Divination. And again, everything is matte. So it's all the shadows here are matte. I'm just going to do 2 layers because it's hard to get full product on my finger. Now, these are a matte powder, but some of the shades seem to have a little bit more grip than others. So they come up very easily on the brush, but when I'm swatching it with my finger, they seem to kind of stick a little bit more. No problem on the eyes though, but I did want to let you know because with swatching it with a finger, it does kind of look a little different. So then we have this kind of chartreuse khaki shade, and you can feel a little grip in all of the formulas, but particularly the light purple and the light green are the 2 that are just a little bit more challenging to swatch, just because it kind of, you know, they have so much grip that it kind of gets stuck right at the top there. So that's why I wanted to go in with 2 layers. But shade wise, we have a light blue base lavender here, followed by a deeper purple. And this is kind of like a true purple. We've got a great balance here of blue and red in this. A lot of times we see these purples are going to be, you know, more of a reddish base. This is pretty evenly balanced. I have to say I really love the purple shades in this palette. And then we have kind of this like you know, a dry aged mustard kind of shade here, and then a more of a spring green with just a little bit more yellow in it. You can see when you buff this out and you buff out the khaki, they both have a very yellow base to them. So overall though, I wasn't sure how much I'd like this palette. I really wanted to try it for the purple shades, but I actually do like it a lot. My one thing is I do wish that they had a shimmer in there somewhere. So, but you know, that's personal preference. This is the blush in Lavender, Le Tarot de Chanel. So this is limited edition. I really love the tarot cards on here. I think they are really cute. This is a pretty powdery blush. It comes up incredibly easily. And yeah, you can see it's going to be a light lavender. Now this is going to be a little bit more pink than the eyeshadow palette. You can see we have more of like a light cool tone pink as our base here to the lavender, which, you know, makes it a little bit more suitable for the cheeks so it doesn't look bruised, in my opinion. So one thing to note, the blush does come with a brush with its own little pouch. So same kind of brush that they have been putting with these recently. So we've got more of our triangle shape, and it is slightly angled there. The blush itself also comes with a pouch, as well as the eyeshadow palette. The eyeshadow palette also comes with 2 foam tip applicators. So those are the eyeshadow and blush, but they also brought out a new Noir Allure mascara, number 27, Amethyste. And I love this shade. It's a nice deep purple. It goes very well with the deeper purple here from the eyeshadow palette. I also just wanted to swatch. This is from the summer collection, 37 Lila. And I'm just going to put this here for comparison so you can see how much lighter that shade is. I really like using Lila on my lower lashes because it adds a little brightening. And I love having these two paired together. I think they go so beautifully together. The Lila is very similar to the lightest eyeshadow, and the Amethyste is similar to the deepest. So I think they are a great complementary duo. Let's go ahead and talk about these items while we look at some demos, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the lip products. So we're going to start off with the eye swatches from the Divination eyeshadow palette. And as we know, Chanel's creative team right now has been a collective. So we have the creative collective, and this time, this Clairvoyance collection has been created by Cecile Paravina. So she is one of the Comet Collective members, and her inspiration here was from Coco Chanel's fascination with the art of divination. And according to information on Chanel.com, it says, striking a harmony between deep shades and hints of light, the Fall/Winter 2024 collection, Clairvoyance, can be used to create mysterious, nuanced looks that are equal parts versatile and captivating. We have 2 grams of product in this quad with an 18-month shelf life, and these are made in Italy. As I mentioned, this palette is limited edition. Now, my thoughts on this palette, I actually think it's a really pretty palette, and I think it looks better in person when you're actually playing around with it than it does in the photos. You know, I personally do like to have a little bit of shimmer, so most of the time when I wear this, I'll probably pair this with either a highlighter that I put on the eyes. Actually, I think the one from the summer collection with that like blue iridescence really pairs nicely with this. But I think it's really nice for an all matte look. And I wasn't too thrilled about kind of that chartreuse and green shade in here originally, but I can see how they play together, how they work. They warm things up a little bit, and they work really nice for crease colors or even contrast, depending on how you want to do it. But for me personally, it's that light lavender shade that I think is, you know, that's my favorite, followed by the deeper amethyst purple. I really like it. So I do think that this is a nice palette, but I will most likely pair it with some sort of shimmery topper just for personal preference. Now, I paired these eyeshadows with the Noir Allure mascaras in the Lila shade, number 37 on the lower lashes from the summer collection, and number 27 Amethyst, which is part of this Clairvoyance collection. It is limited edition, but I love this color. And by the way, the Lila shade is still available. But I wish this wasn't limited edition. I really love the combination of having the deeper purple and the lighter purple mascara. The Noir Allure formula isn't my favorite. I do find, you know, over time, as I'm using this, as it's been open for a while, I can get a little flaking from this mascara. So it's not a favorite formula, but I do like it in these different colors. Now, according to Chanel, the mascara is an innovative formula that transforms lashes for a 4-dimensional result. It offers volume, length, curl, and definition, and each stroke immediately intensifies your look. It does have some key ingredients like provitamin B5 and rice wax, beeswax. The mascara has 6 grams of product, a 6-month shelf life, which is standard for mascaras, and it's made in France. And you can see that we have more of a nylon bristled brush for this, and everything's kind of spread out a little bit more, so you really can kind of coat each lash individually without getting, you know, much of a clumping effect. So overall, I think the mascara formula for me is average, but the color on this makes this like a fantastic mascara. So this is definitely one I'll be using a lot. I love this color. I think, you know, the shade of purple, it's deep enough that it's adding depth and dimension to your lashes, but the purple shade is a little like je ne sais quoi. Like, you know, you're looking at it and, you know, you see something a little different, but you can't really tell what it is. So I personally really like that. I think it is a great shade. It pairs beautifully with this collection, but I also think it really pairs well with the summer collection. I have to say, these two collections, the summer and this fall collection, they have a lot of items that kind of complement each other, in my opinion. And actually the spring, I think I'm thinking of as well, with that mermaid highlighter. So I think if you picked up any of the eyeshadow crayons from the last collection, or if you have the spring quads or anything like that, I feel like these collections that have come out in 2024, a lot of these limited edition items really complement each other. So I think that is kind of a nice tie-in. They're not totally different collections. They're different enough to, you know, purchase things, of course, but they aren't going to be so different that they don't pair well with items that you've recently purchased. So I really love that aspect of how this collection plays in with that. Now, as we're looking at these demos and we're moving on to the blush, I have to say the blush is disappointing. I'm all for a lavender blush. You know, the fact that this was matte did have me a little worried because I wasn't sure how it would translate as a blush versus just like a matte powder. This really is more of a matte powder. So you could even just use this as a powder on your face. It's a pretty powdery formula in the first place. So when you put your brush into it, you know, you get a lot of powder kick up for that. So the powder picks up easily, it goes down easily. There's not really much color payoff with this. So if you want to use this as blush, I personally would recommend using this more as a base to kind of cool off another blush shade. So kind of buff this into your cheek and then put on maybe like a soft pink or something to give it a little bit more of a bluish lavendery effect to it, but you're not really going to see the lavender from this blush too much. It's pretty light. You could even use this as a face powder, as a setting powder, but I do think that, you know, if you pile this one on too much, it does look a little bit cakey. So I wouldn't recommend purchasing it necessarily for that purpose, but it's definitely something, if you do have it, something to play around with, use as a pinch. So I think the formula on this, you know, it's nice as easy to pick up, unlike the permanent blush formula in the Chanel line for their powder blushes. But the fact that there's really like very little color payoff, you know, I just kind of think this is a fail. If this had not been a matte product and we had something with a little bit of shimmer in it, such as the lavender shade from the Dior D'Amour, then, you know, you're at least going to see something there on your skin. So I feel like this was kind of a miss. So I am disappointed by the purple blush, but there's nothing wrong with the formula itself. Just keep in mind that this is a more powdery formula, and if you've purchased any of the limited edition blushes from Chanel recently, they have definitely had more of a gel powder kind of texture to them in comparison. So just something to note, this is not going to be the same formula as the blushes that we have seen in recent launches. So for today's look, I actually ended up having a base of the lavender blush, and then I added the Fantasy de Chanel blush from, was that 2 years ago now? I added that on top. I think they pair beautifully together, and I really like how it does cool that off, and you get a little bit of a hint of lavender on the cheeks, even though you have the Fantasy de Chanel on top. So I think it's a really nice combination, and if you're interested in the lavender blush, I would purchase it with the intention of mixing it with something similar to this. The blush has 14 grams of product and has an 18-month shelf life and is made in Italy. So I hope that was helpful. let's just take a look at those swatches one more time. This is the Divination quad, and I really do like how the formula for these, you know, it's really easy to blend out, but it's not so powdery that the shades are going to kind of brush away. You have a little bit of grip there. However, if you do want to build up the color, I think it is a bit easier to build it up either with a small firm brush or a fingertip, or, you know, the phone tip applicators work as well. So just something to note there, but you want something so that the shadow, you know, that grippy part really comes in contact with your skin. So I think the Divination quad is actually really nice. The Lavender blush is a bit of a fail. You know, it definitely will work well for certain purposes, but in the category of blush itself, it's not visible enough. So I just feel like it's not really much of a blush. It's more of a blush mixer. And if you go into it with that intent, you know, I think it is a nice product, but on its own, it's not something that I will use regularly. And as for the mascara, again, this is Amethyste. This is Lila from a previous collection. And I really love them. I really love them together. And I think overall, it's a nice formula. It's just not my favorite formula. For Chanel mascaras, I still prefer the Volume de Chanel. I still think that is a better formula than the Noir Allure personally. But I love the packaging on these with the click top. And before we move on to lips, I just want to mention one more time, I think that the nail polish itself is stunning. I love the nail polish. I love the swirl of colors in here. I think it is a beautiful polish. So I would definitely recommend that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the new Rouge Allure Velvet liquid lipsticks. And I purchased 2 of them, but then they also had a sample size of 1. So we have 3 shades to look at. The first shade here is 206 Supernant. And this is what is on my lips right now. We're going to put this right here. And I'm just going to take the bottom portion of this swatch and kind of rub that out a little bit. So you can see if you wanted to buff that softly into your lips, this is going to be the color you get. So you really get a much softer shade. Now this will dry to a matte finish. You do feel a little bit of the powders in there. And we'll talk a bit more about the formula in just a minute. So I would say overall that this is going to be a warm, it's a warm, soft red. So it's definitely a soft red kind of mixed with salmon pink. Then we have 226 Séduisante. And this is I really love this shade. I actually almost purchased this shade, but I switched at the last minute to the 206. I think I would have preferred this one. It is going to be a cooler tone. It's a burgundy with a touch of berry in it. And I think it's a really beautiful shade. This is such a nice, rich red for like holiday or just an impactful lip. And then the last shade that I have here is 236. This is Ensorcelante or Ensorcelant. And this is the purple. And I wasn't sure if I should get this or not, but I actually ended up picking up these 2 with the idea of mixing the 2 shades together to make this one a little bit cooler. You can see though, if you buff this into your lips and you just use a little bit, you can get a really beautiful lavender shade. Having this deeper, you know, is definitely going to be beautiful on, you know, with certain looks, but it's also great for Halloween. So just something to note there. I love kind of those deeper, more goth-like lips for around the holidays, the Halloween holidays. So I think it works well with that. And personally, I really like these 2 together. So this was the 226 and the 236. So Séduisante and Ensorcelant. So I think those 2 are my favorite shades. Let's take a look at the lip swatches. I'll also show you what these look like mixed. So the Chanel Rouge Allure Liquid Velvet Lipsticks have been reformulated. So this is a new version. And I have to say, this purple shade, the 236, if you're interested in that, I would pick that up relatively soon, because that one did sell out online. I think that was the first shade to sell out online. So just something to note there. According to Chanel, this is a long-lasting matte liquid lipstick with a smoothing and blurring effect. The moisturizing formula wears like a second skin and is easy to apply. And there's a naturally derived dispersion oil that reveals highly concentrated pigments for intense and even color that lasts up to 12 hours. So there's a blend of powders, there's hyaluronic acid, and they also have ume flower oil in there to give you comfort and protection. The Rouge Allure Liquid Velvet Lipsticks have 6 milliliters of product, an 18-month shelf life, and these are made in France. Now, texturally, these have a little bit of that vinyl texture when you put them on. So if you rub your lips together, you'll feel a little bit of that vinyl texture, but you can feel the powders in there as well. So it's kind of interesting because you really feel both the vinyl and the powder. Then that vinyl texture as it sets, that fades away, and you're left with more of just a powdery texture on your lips. So it really does feel like I put powder on my lips. So you can feel that powdery texture. Now, according to Chanel, these are supposed to be moisturizing and hydrating. To me, they do feel slightly drying though. I actually prefer the previous version of the Rouge Allure Velvets, which to me, they would dry down, they'd set, they weren't moisturizing, but they weren't drying. Whereas this just feels, my skin feels a little bit tighter wearing these. And I did take out some of my older Rouge Allure Velvets to just kind of compare. And I really do feel like those were just a little bit more comfortable on the lips than this new version. However, it's not a huge difference. This is a slight difference in formulas to me. So I think if it's a lip product that you never really wore very often, you might not really notice much of a difference in the formula. But if it's something that perhaps was a favorite of yours, I do think that the previous one was just slightly better. So, I have to say this is still a nice enough formula to purchase. I will probably pick up additional shades if they bring out some cooler tones, but I'm not super thrilled with the shade range that they have here. So we have, again, as I mentioned, 226 and 236. Those are going to be my two favorites of the ones I picked up. But if you look at the entire shade range, it runs very warm. And again, a lot of the shades are going to be your reds. So I would love to see some lighter, cooler tones in this, and I have some in the older formula that I would just love to see replicated. So let's look at the swatches just one more time, and you could see in the demos where I mixed these two 206 and 236. I do feel like these two, both having the cooler tones to them, are going to mix a little bit better. But you could see that the product itself, it dries and sets pretty quickly, so it can look a little bit patchy. So you want to work in small areas at a time to avoid that, and don't put too much all over your lips if you're trying to blend the shades. So just something to note there. But again, we have shade number 206 here, which is called Supernant. Then we have 226 Séduisante and 236 Ensorcelante. And I have to say, I do think that it's a nice formula, but I do hope they expand the shade range and they include some lighter shades and some cooler tone shades, particularly cooler, lighter shades. So I would love to see that, but I do really like these two shades, and these are ones that I would recommend purchasing if you are looking for some cooler shades, something kind of fun to play with. And you can see that they both can sheer out to very light shades. I also like the 206, but this is going to be more of, again, it's like a warm, soft red. More red than a coral, but it definitely has a little bit of that peachy orange in there. So I think it's a nice shade, but for my coloring, I prefer slightly cooler tone lipsticks. If you are slightly warmer than me, I think it's going to be an absolutely beautiful shade. And I think it pairs nicely with this collection, but it's probably a shade that will pair better with the other palette than it does with the Divination quad. So that's just my thoughts on those shades. But overall, let's just do a quick summation of this collection. And starting off with the quad, I actually really like the quad. And I think having these two shades here at the bottom They actually do really work well with the purples. I love how you can really kind of get a bit more depth. They add some contrast to really make that pop a little bit more. I think this quad is actually really well done formula wise, and the color story I think is better than I thought it was going to be. But the lavender blush, you know, this one I think is disappointing because it's just barely there. So let me just go ahead and swatch this Dior. Now the Dior lavender, this is Dior Amour. This really is more of a highlight. I touched the red, sorry. But let me swipe that off. All right, let's try that again. So I just feel like at least the Dior is more pink. This has a little bit more blue in the Chanel, but having the sheen there helps it be a little bit more visible. The matte, really, you just don't really see too much of the color. So I'd have to give Dior the win for that one, even though, again, it wasn't quite what I was hoping for either. So I do think that this product here was kind of a fail, but I do love the quad. Formula wise for the lipsticks, I think the formula is nice. I still slightly prefer the previous version. And again, we have 206, 226, and 236. 226 and 236 I really love with this particular color story. As for the mascaras, I think the Lilas pairs very well with the Amethyste mascara, which is limited edition for this collection. This for me is definitely a must get. I love this. I might actually end up picking up another tube just to have on hand because I think this is a shade that I'm going to wear quite a bit. So I hope that was helpful. Please let me know your thoughts on this collection. Share them down below in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you very soon. Have a great day.